And hello, we're live. I fixed the audio issue. I fixed the audio issue.
Yeah, yeah, we
Yeah.
hope so.
I'm pretty sure I fixed it. I just tested it. I looked up on YouTube what the hell was going on, and every time you have a PC problem these days, if you Google it, you find a video by an Indian explaining it.
Yeah.
It's like
Oh yeah, those guys carried me
uh,
to functional analysis course at college.
it's
Yeah.
it's really cool though. It's like basically the Wikipedia
Uh-huh.
of how to fix your PC. It's basically just that like someone should give an award to these random 200 or so Indian guys. Just
Mm.
upload how to fix your minutest problems. Love these
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, for real.
the problem was that the Focusrite, when you plug it in, it has two input devices because it's supposed to be used with two instruments or two microphones, right? And
Mhm.
when you turn it on and you have only one microphone plugged in, the device thinks that there's a second microphone, so it only records one audio track.
Mm.
But it's still
I
kind of
see.
silly. It's still kind of silly. I don't know why it doesn't automatically register any of that. Yeah. HeliCOPEter. Is that what we're going to talk about today? Oh.
Yeah, um, yeah. So what ended up happening is that the president of Iran went to a meeting with the Azeri president, and yeah, turns out he just like fell. Some people were saying it was like an IDF operation, but no,
No.
just a air malfunction. Um,
Stupidity. From what it sounds like, the helicopter worked fine. They flew into a mountainous area with heavy
oh,
fog. With heavy fog, which is one of the most dangerous things you can do. That's what killed
mhm,
that American basketball player, Kobe Bryant, I think was his name. That's actually
really?
when you Google it, that's how most helicopter accidents happen. It's flying in fog
Hmm.
because if you fly in fog, I need to find that explanation. Apparently, there is the upward draft is reduced or something like that, and it's harder to climb. And when you fly a helicopter in fog, you can lose altitude without even noticing it because you can't
Mhm.
see that you're losing altitude. You don't notice it, and suddenly you crash into the side of a mountain or something.
Yeah. Do you think that the pilots knew that, or was it more just like a stupid decision?
Do you
Let's cut some.
remember? Do you remember the Smolensk aircraft disaster?
Uh, I don't know what that is actually.
When the Polish president was killed in there was the first time, you know what the Katyn massacre was, right? When the Soviet
Yes.
Union murdered Polish soldiers. So the first time that the Russian state allowed for a memorial service in Katyn to happen, or like when the Russian president, said that he would attend it, right? The Polish president wanted to fly out and attend it as well, and the plane crashed because it crashed in a low visibility fog environment where the pilot couldn't
Mm.
find the runway. And what happened in the crash is that the pilot radioed through and told the crew that, hey, I can't find the runway. This is dangerous. I don't know if I can land here. And members of the crew told the pilot, well, try it anyway. They kept pushing him, edging him on to try landing. And instead of landing, he crashed into a forest and unfortunately killed the president of Poland, but also a lot of people died in that plane crash. Like some of the most
Ooh.
high-ranking and important members of the Polish intelligentsia were on that plane. We're talking about distinguished historians, figures of literature, of state and church. It was a really horrific disaster for Poland, but it's something that didn't happen because of a conspiracy or something sinister or something like that. Things like that can happen
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes, you know.
just accidents. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised
Yeah.
if what happened here is also that Raisi or someone kept telling him, yeah, I don't want to be late for what I'm doing next. Fly through this fog cloud in the middle of mountains.
Yeah. Yeah, uh,
But unlike the
I
Polish
guess
crash, I don't feel sorry for the people killed. Fuck them. Raisi is a horrible person. No,
Yeah.
Raisi was a horrible
I,
person.
I don't know. I don't know too much about him except for the
Ah,
fact that I think he used to judge early on during like the
oh,
Islamic Revolution,
oh, you have
and
no idea.
he
You have
sentenced
no
a bunch
idea.
of people to death.
A bunch? Oh my God, Rav, you have no idea what he did.
No, what
Jesus.
did he do?
Okay, when the Ayatollah seized power in 1979, the Islamic
Mhm.
Revolution happened as because of an alliance between Iranian leftists and Iranian Islamists, who disagreed on almost everything, but they both agreed that the Shah had to go. And it was both these social groups that basically overthrew the Shah, right? But what
Yes.
happened within a year was that the Ayatollah ordered all left. Oh, sorry, I just got a notification from Telegram. That was unfortunate.
Mm.
What happened within a year was that the Ayatollah had all left-leaning people in Iran arrested. There was a mass arrest wave in 1980, I think, early 1980, or something like that. And it's like 80,000 people were arrested. Everyone who was a member of a civic organization or a political party that was either communist, socialist, or social democratic, they were all rounded up and arrested. And then something really horrible happened, which was the Iraq war broke out, right? Saddam Hussein invaded Iran. And one thing that is often forgotten is that one of the first things that the Ayatollah did when Saddam Hussein invaded Iran was he declared that all the political prisoners, all the people who had been rounded up and arrested when he seized power, were conspiring with Saddam Hussein, were part of a conspiracy, and ordered all of them executed, basically. He used the Iraqi invasion of Iran to get rid of all political rivals. And Raisi was a judge who did something called 5-minute trials, which was he was set up. Yeah, he had a desk in a prison in Iran. In Tehran is where he mainly acted. And what happened is the people from the prison, the political prisoners, would be dragged to his desk. He would give them a 5-minute lecture about the virtues of Islam and then sentence them to death. And they would be dragged out into the prison court and shot. And the incredible thing here is he is believed to be responsible for the deaths of 8,000 to possibly up to 15,000 people. He alone. Yeah. That's why he was so hated in Tehran, by the way. That's why so many, especially Iranians in Tehran, are celebrating him. He has a reputation for being an executioner. Like, what a lot of people don't know is that his rule, the last 3 years, right? The amount of people being executed in Iran in the last 3 years is unprecedented. It hasn't been that high since the 1980s. Like, last week alone, I think 5 people were hanged. It's like hangings after hangings after hangings after hangings have been happening for the last 3 years throughout Iran. And it's all because of him. He had a reputation of that before he became president. He worked in the Islamic justice system of Iran, and he was known as the hangman. That was literally his nickname because he kept sentencing people to death.
Yeah, he was kind of an executioner then. I see.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's dead.
Well,
like an accident.
It's also good because he was picked for president by the Ayatollah because the Ayatollah wanted him to succeed him.
Yeah, now there are. I guess he lost a very important candidate. Who do you think is going to be the next president? The guy that comes in? The
vice president is a nobody. Well, the thing about Iran that you have to keep in mind is the president doesn't really have all the powers that you think he does. Like, real power lies with the Ayatollah.
It's in the supreme leader,
Yeah. And the Ayatollah is probably shitting his pants right now because this was basically his plan to set up Iran for after his death, and it has now been ruined. He probably doesn't really know anymore what comes after him. There are rumors going around that he's now considering putting his son in charge.
So there would be like another Khomeini then.
Well, yeah, his
But
son is also a Islamic judge or something like that. I'm not entirely sure.
oh, okay.
But the thing is, nobody in Iran wants these people around anymore. This is a
Yeah,
walking dead regime. It has lost all legitimacy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm not entirely sure if this will survive another decade, this regime.
I don't know. They've been very resilient despite a bunch of things. I thought that COVID was going to be the thing that did them in. Partly because when I saw COVID develop in Iran, one thing that we saw was just the sheer amount of revolutionaries that died. Right? These were a bunch of people in their
The
60s, in
stupidity
their
of it,
70s.
yeah.
Yeah, they also mismanaged the role of the vaccination and stuff.
Well, it's the stupidity of fundamentalism. Like I remember what you're
Yeah,
talking about. Do you mean when when the Islamic extremists, the fundamentalists, when it was announced that COVID was happening, they all deliberately went to the shrines and licked them with their tongues, so to prove, we're not gonna get this disease. Faith will defeat this disease. And yet thousands of these like besieged morons running
that
up to the
happened.
shrines. Yeah, they happened.
But
They
but
gathered
the
together the flocks of
government,
others.
yeah, but the government also made like a bunch of mistakes on the management of the pandemic. And ultimately, I thought that was kind of a good to them, especially because COVID killed a bunch of like revolutionaries, right? It killed a
It
bunch of
is
guys
true.
of the generation.
It is
But
true.
but it
Your mic
survived.
is really bad, by the
It
way.
survived.
Your mic is really bad. Just so you
Oh,
know. Last time it was me. So
I can fix that. Give me a second. Uh, okay, should be done.
there we
So
go.
yeah. So ultimately, I guess what I mean is that um they have survived a bunch of things that people believed they wouldn't. And you know, I, at this point, I'm not super sure what would be necessary to take down like an Iranian regime.
You'd never really know what causes a revolution, to be honest with you.
Yes, and I think one thing that's super important, like you and I both make a lot of videos discussing political theory, right? Political history, history, but also how it ties into human agency and institutions, for example. But one of the main drivers of history that, historians don't often like to talk about because, it's a little uncomfortable to even discuss its accidents, disease, things like that. It is really likely that, for example,
Or
Alexander the
decisions. Decisions. Decisions also matter. Like something that was recently revealed from the Stasi archives was when East Germany collapsed, right? In the months leading up to the collapse, there were mass protests in all major cities of East Germany, in Dresden, in Leipzig, in Berlin, where hundreds of thousands of people marched on the streets protesting against the government.
Mm,
And archivists find out, going through the Stasi archives, that Mielke, who was the boss of the Stasi, was preparing the army to basically do a Tiananmen Square to
mm,
massacre the protests. And sort of in the last moment, he was prevented from doing this horrible decision when Honecker resigned.
yeah.
And the new guy told him, "What the fuck? Are you mad? We can't do that." you know. Um,
Yeah.
I'm sorry for the vibrating sound. I keep getting text messages from a relative of
No,
mine.
it's fine. Yeah.
It's
I,
just-
that's fine. You can always mute your phone. I don't know. I guess I was reading that Alexander the Great might have not died because of poisoning, but by just like a regular ass disease. So yeah.
I do think that this catastrophe will
Um,
have a long-term effect. Well, not really a catastrophe. I refuse to call this helicopter crash a catastrophe. It is a blessing.
mhm.
It is karma. And I'm really
Yeah,
happy for the Iranian people who are celebrating this.
yeah,
And
yeah. I think one thing that's this regime is going to have like a lot of trouble with is like the generational shift, right? Because there are the people who led the revolution are reaching the age where they're starting to die, and there's no real clear line of succession precisely because they're so hated. Um, and a lot of their generals are dying. A lot of their important people are being killed or dying on accidents or dying of age or dying of COVID. So, you know, eh, part of their borrowed time is precisely that there is no clear way of political inheritance for this machine.
I would
They
also
they survived a lot though. Uh-huh.
I would also argue that what they created is
Mhm.
something that is so unstable that it can't last.
Mm.
It's something that just doesn't work. There is no, like, if you look at the Iranian constitution, technically speaking, the Ayatollah is supposed to be the supreme leader, not the Ayatollah, the supreme leader. There are many Ayatollahs. The
Mhm.
supreme leader is supposed to be a figure like a monarch in a European constitutional monarchy.
Sort of, yeah.
It is supposed to be like that, but it didn't work because, of course, the Ayatollahs kept mingling around in politics, kept shoving politics around, kept involving themselves, and couldn't do the stand back thing. They were unable to do that.
Mm.
And through that, it became little more than sort of a dictatorship of fanatics, a fanaticism dictatorship, which over time, as with all of these regimes that are built on something like this, it loses all credibility.
Mhm.
And we reach the
Wouldn't.
point.
Mm.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. Please
Yeah,
continue.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, sorry, I interrupted you actually. I guess I was going to ask you, wouldn't you think that that was quite similar in function to the role that the military had in Ataturk's Turkey? And Ataturk's
Yes,
Turkey
and it also
did.
didn't last. It also didn't last.
Mm,
It's a good
mm,
comparison. It didn't last. What did the people of
yeah.
Turkey do with Ataturk's military? They kept rebelling against the military institution. They didn't want to be ruled by an army. They wanted to rule themselves. And
Yes,
that's
yes,
that's
yes.
the story that we see repeated almost everywhere, all the time. People don't want to be ruled by. People want to rule themselves. It's as simple as that.
Mhm. Yeah, I am. Iran. I guess they've been kind of falling off the news because of everything else going on in the world right now. But they have cultivated a very, very resistant, very continuous uh, movement to overthrow the Ayatollahs. They not don't like them, and um, a lot of people are ignored. I guess
I think
that's
it is
that's
one
quite
of the.
concerning.
I think that
Yeah.
Iran. I personally believe that Iran is one of the most important countries in terms of political development in the world right now.
Mm.
Iran is the place where it's not where modern Islamism was born. Modern Islamism was born in Egypt, and the Iran is that country that gave it sort of the massive boost that it needed to become popular, right? The
Mhm.
idea that you could use religion as a political antidote to all sorts of social problems caused by modernity, blah blah blah, right? And I think that Iran, if it has a second revolution against Islamist tyranny, I believe that Iran will be the country that ends Islamism. I
Mm.
believe that a sort of not necessarily Islam, well, maybe even Islamic, but certainly a sort of humanism can be born there. There isn't an Islamic humanism. There isn't an Islamic concept of a universal humanity in which all human beings are equal and are entitled to sort of equal rights and equal treatment, etc. But Iran might be the place that
Yeah.
gives birth to that. Iran might be, if they can pull off a revolution against this regime, we might actually get there. So I'm very hopeful. I follow what's going on in Iran a lot. I follow all the Iranian diaspora people on social media and on YouTube and on Twitter, etc.
Mm.
Because I really do care. I have high hopes and high expectations, probably unrealistically high expectations of the Iranian people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was quite happy to see that they get a lot of international support even then. There's a very big Korean radical feminist movement, for example. And the Korean radical feminist movement overall is incredibly supportive of the Iranian women's movement, precisely because they see a lot of the violence that they experience over there as kind of mirroring the structures that they sometimes face. And that is very important, you know, like there are a lot of people that kind of understand that the Iranian regime is not necessarily liked by the public. And I appreciate that distinction because something that happens, uh, I don't know, with the Venezuelans, for example, is that there are often not many distinctions made between the government and the public, you know. It's very
Yes.
common for people to say like, "Oh, the Venezuelans are like communists," when in fact the one of the bigger migratory crises in the world right now is like Venezuelans leaving Venezuela. So yeah, I guess I can appreciate that. You know, fortunately for the Iranians, there is an effort to make that distinction. You know, people know very clearly that
Oh
the
yes.
public, the
I
public
I
does not want.
I adopted the language of the Iranian
Mm.
diaspora and the because if you browse their social media content and what they say, many Iranians refer to Iran as an occupied country, which is interesting.
Mm.
They refer to
Yeah.
Iran as the mullah occupied Iran. And I adopted that
Okay.
language. I refer to Iran myself now as a country occupied by the mullahs. Um, I don't know
Mm.
how true that is, right? But I do that because they do, and
Mm. I
I
see.
want to, I want to sort of contribute to legitimizing. I almost said delegitimizing. Oh God, I'm such an idiot. I want to contribute to legitimizing their cause through this, if it helps even
Yeah,
just a
yeah,
little
yeah.
bit.
Okay, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, it's a valid
Did you know
cause.
that? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Did you know that Putin is traveling by plane right now
Oh,
to
where's he
attend
going?
Raisi's funeral? He's yeah,
You're joking.
he is. Yeah.
I haven't even seen that. Holy cow, he must be desperate for any sort of support.
Yeah. The
Oh,
the
wow.
pilot has a chance to do the funniest thing
Oh,
ever.
yes, please, please, please. I'm not a religious man, but I'm going to pray for fog. Please.
Yeah.
Some, I don't know, some divine fog engulf this plane. Make it disappear. How many other high ranking members of the Iranian government are on the plane?
No, no, no. It's just
Of
Putin. Like,
no, I mean,
he's
of the
making
Russian
like a
government, sorry.
statement.
Okay.
Ah,
I would hope
I
that
am
more
not
people
sure.
on it. I'd hope that more people, that Patrushev is on it. If Patrushev is on it, that would be great. Ah, yes.
Yeah, it's it's
Mm.
interesting in a way. Like, yeah, just the fact that something completely unrelated to protocol and what we'd expect to be the normal course of things has just shaken possibly the future of Iran. Uh, and it
How do you
and it
think it
was
happens?
an accident. Yeah, it was an opportunity, I guess. Like
When
one of
when
these.
when
Mm.
Francoism, what was the name of that guy? Francoist general killed by the Basques, by ETA, the
Mm.
famous car bombing, the assassination of Luis Carrero Blanco. Luis Carrero Blanco. I don't know if you ever heard of this. I'll give you the Wikipedia article so you can read this. Luis Carrero Blanco. Blanco was what a funny name, Blanco.
Yeah, yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
anyway, he was considered the successor by Franco. He was appointed as Franco's successor, and like, just like it's the funniest thing ever. But 2 weeks after Franco sort of made it clear that this is my successor, ETA killed him. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that made it very, that sort of derailed the entire raison d'etre of the Franco regime. Franco could no longer find a successor who would,
Mm.
continue Franco's legacy of, I don't know, gangsterism or whatever you want to call it. And the
Mhm.
regime collapsed mere 2 years later.
Mhm.
So one can hope that something like this is now happening in Iran. That just like, Franco died, well, maybe Ayatollah Khomeini will die. Not Khomeini, Khamenei. Yeah. And
Yeah, yeah,
because he doesn't have an ideal successor anymore, we'll see something else appear in its stead. One can hope.
yeah, and again, the thing I want to like bring everyone's attention to is that the political class that led the Islamic side of the Iranian Revolution in 1979, they are very old. Like they're very, very old at this point, and it's very unclear what kind of inheritance they can have in terms of like their political project, and you know much like what happened in Chile with Pinochet, like if it's unclear how things are going to go, uh, that typically leads to regime collapse. The most effective regimes, uh, supposing they're not democratic, right, are the ones that manage very effectively how they are going to continue power after the autocrat is gone. This is why monarchies, for example, put so much emphasis on the role of succession. Um, and this is just kind of a situation where succession is unclear, and that's going to be very bad for them, and probably good for like the Iranians that want a democratic republic or something like that.
Yeah.
I am very unsure what the Iranian political thought is going to be after this.
There are two camps. I can tell you
Mm.
that already. From what I observed, there are like two main ones. Of course, like in
Mm.
opposition, you will find many things. There's sort of the more liberal democratic wing who wants to build a sort of European style republic.
Uh-huh.
And then there is a monarchist camp
All right.
that wants the Shah to return. And I have to tell you, among the monarchist camp, there are a few crazies. there,
Okay.
there are a
Yeah.
few crazy people. They're like, we will forcefully deconvert everyone from Islam and make them all Zoroastrians. We will bring back the ancient Persian King of Kings system. Like, there's some crazies there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, that's interesting.
but it's
Uh,
not all of them. Like
but
it's kind of
isn't
it's kind of
uh,
interesting that the heir to the throne is a
he's
really
like a
nice
liberal,
guy.
right?
Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
really nice guy, which is really funny.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, it could be very unfortunate for the monarchists if they do get their project because something very happened. No, something very similar happened in Mexico during the War of the Reform, where the French, the conservatives invited a king from the Austro-Hungarian dynasty to rule over Mexico. So he would become the king of a second Mexican empire. And they were like conservatives. They liked that he was Catholic, but he was like a post Enlightenment prince that agreed with like the spirit of the revolutions of 1848 and shit. And yeah, he ended up being about as liberal as Juarez, and he wanted Juarez to be in his cabinet. So, it could be very possible, a situation where they invite, this guy becomes king and he ends up being as liberal as the liberals, perhaps.
I do have unrealistically high expectations from the Iranians
Mm.
because I do think that this is sort of when they overthrow their regime, it will be the first real chance that we've had since the 1970s, 1960s, really, to end Islamism, to sort of
Mm.
watch it collapse because it, like, you know that I'm a student of Slavic history, and that the one chapter of history there that really interests me is the death of the Soviet Union, and that I
Mm.
believe in Kotkin's theory that the Soviet Union collapsed because it was incapable of sustaining itself, that it had a deeply flawed and broken social contract. And Kotkin's idea is
Mm.
that Kotkin believes that authoritarian regimes and authoritarian structures in general are self-destructive, that they always destroy themselves in the end. And I believe that, and basically one thing he concludes from that is that the most important thing in combating any sort of extremist anti-democratic movement is failure, is giving them the space to fail, and then rubbing
Mhm.
that failure into their face, more or less. And if that is
Okay.
Islamist regime collapses on its own through a revolution because it was unable to build a functioning social contract and provide any sort of prosperity or even just a decent livable life to the people it ruled over, if that thing collapses, you will be able to rub that collapse into the face of Islamists for the rest of all
Mm.
eternity. And that is why I am so excited about the prospect of an Iranian revolution. That is why I am so much looking forward to it.
I
And
see.
when that revolution happens, the thing that I'm really desperately hoping for is, and the thing that I've actually talked with a politician about it and pressed that issue. Um, I really think that in Europe, in the US, we should have plans in place for what to do when the Islamic Republic falls. To immediately relieve every single sanction, immediately reopen all the embassy channels,
Mm.
immediately make everything available for a post Islamist government to to immediately jump in and give them everything they need to rebuild and build a functioning state and society.
Um, I see.
Let me stretch my
I
legs. I'm
wish
getting hiccups.
yeah, I wish we could do that.
Okay.
There are a lot of, I don't know, I feel like the EU is kind of like closing flanks right now. I'm not sure if they have the heart to help at the moment. I get that impression from the temperament of politicians. But what you say is right. You know, it's kind of like the spirit of what's going on right now in Argentina, where, you know, for hundreds of years, well, not hundreds, but like for decades, uh, libertarian kind of ANCAP uh, ideology at no point of reference. They could just say like whatever, reference Rothbard and say, yeah, or thing works great, you know. But now there exists an actual ANCAP inspired government. And supposing that they don't do well, which they're not doing great at the moment, you can indeed have like a reference, right? You can have a reference to uh, an attempted experiment that did not work. And yeah, Islamism, you know, the Republican variant of Islamism did have like an attempt like that in Iran. And uh, yeah, it is not a regime that can necessarily argue for its continuation on its merits. It has to constantly whip at its population and make the case that, you know, they have to be in power through the barrel of a gun. Uh, and yeah, if they don't succeed, then that will be like a very very bad mark on that political project.
I
I
think it's
would say
funny
that.
that just how Kotkin thinks of the Soviet Union, you think of ANCAPism as like, yeah, let's hope that Argentina collapses into a complete mess just so I can rub it into the face of ANCAPs.
I mean, there might be some revanchism there because you know this guy is like a super fan of Thatcher,
Well,
but
let's be honest. Like, I know you Latin Americans enough to know that nobody over there likes Argentinians for some reason. So maybe there's a bit of that. I don't know why that
yeah,
is. Why do all Latin Americans
mm.
hate Argentinians so much? Why is that exactly? What's going on there?
If you look at Latin America overall, you'll see that most of the countries that were established there uh, in what used to be the Spanish Empire, right, built upon the idea of mestizaje, which is the process through which there was like ethnic admixture. You know, the Spanish married into uh, the native populations of the Americas. They also married with like slaves, and that created mulatto identities. And the ethnography of Latin America in this sense is like incredibly diverse. And Argentina is like a strange exception to the rule
I didn't know that. Yeah.
because, yeah, constructing the Argentinian state, settlement of like a white European population was much more prevalent than it was, for example, in Peru, right? Because Peru,
It was basically tax avoiders.
yeah.
Wasn't it? Yeah, people who didn't want to pay
So
taxes to the Spanish crown ran away from Colombia, from Chile, and settled in Argentina.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So Argentina and to some degree Uruguay, right, are countries that, in part of their national identity, they call themselves the a little enclave of Europe, right? They
What?
think they are, yeah, they think they're like white Europeans settling in,
Oh, that's
uh
so cringe. That is so
yeah, yeah,
cringe.
yeah. They pride themselves, for example, in having like little Jewish communities that, much like Europe has.
I knew that Argentina was one of the whitest countries
Mm.
in the world. Like it's whiter than
Yes.
France. It's whiter
Yeah,
than
yeah, yeah,
Italy.
yeah.
But I did not know that they made that a sort of part of the national identity to that degree. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
and it's a point of like pride for them in a way. But there also was a time in the early 20th century where they were very rich.
Hmm.
They were very close to becoming one of the bigger economic powers in the world, for example. And they, at least at the time, tried to incorporate a lot of American and British racialist ideas towards the rest of Latin America, like saying our success uh, is because we're part of like the white world, let's say. And yeah, they also have a very unique culture in the sense that their cultural production, their cultural capital is like really really nice and very rich. But again, they use it to just kind of double down on this idea that we are an enclave of Europe in America, right? So yeah.
I've been actually reading through the political structures and developments of Argentina because it's interesting for a
Mm,
video that I'm making. How because it's a funny thing that Argentina wasn't really that directly impacted by sort of the Spanish Empire because it was settled by tax evaders, which is sort of a weird way of saying it. But yeah, what happened with Argentina is really interesting. Argentina was a confederacy when it became independent, where the states, the individual states of the Rio de Plata, had enormous
mm,
political powers vested in them, and the federal government was incredibly weak. But
mm,
the Argentinians constitutionally forgot, like, one of the reasons why the Swiss Confederacy works still to this day is because the Swiss constitution states that the purpose of the central government, the primary purpose, is to prevent the states from screwing each other over, right? To
mm.
prevent the states, the individual little states, the cantone as they're called, from hurting each other and gobbling each other up. And the Argentinians had this great oversight of forgetting to do that. They forgot to put that into the laws. And what happened is Buenos Aires became incredibly rich and powerful. Buenos
Yeah.
Aires began taxing other states, basically, for imports and exports. Buenos Aires began screwing over all other regions. And eventually, Buenos Aires became the government. And with that, the corruption and the incipient power struggles, etc., of Buenos Aires was basically enforced over the rest of Argentina. It's a really tragic story to a degree. Yeah, you could say
Mm.
that Buenos Aires ruined Argentina in a way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It had a process very similar to like decentralization of resources in Paris, right? Like Buenos Aires is very unique because it's a port city, it's a port capital,
It's not just any
which,
port city. It is the
yeah.
best, no, not the best, wait, it's the second best natural harbor in the southern hemisphere,
Mm. Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah, yeah.
is amazing. It is like the only one is that, what is it called? The port of Johannesburg in South Africa is the only one that is better. So it's
Yeah.
quite, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a very well-placed city. It's connected to the outside world. Uh, and yeah, in that sense, it has helped Argentina become a very outward looking nation, but uh, it faces a lot of problems in terms of like also being isolated because the Southern American cone, at least for a very long time, has not had big developments that make it interesting for.
The thing, the thing where I disagree with you on Malay, and the thing where
Uh,
this is probably also to the rest of the audience. The reason why I am not on the Malay bandwagon is I do not believe you can fix the problems Argentina has by just gutting the state down. Maybe I do believe that it has an oversized state, that Buenos Aires has too much power, and that some of this power has to be completely removed, that some of the ministries, certainly some of the state industries, have to go. But I believe the most important thing that you have to do in fixing Argentina, the number one priority, if I were Argentinian president in that hypothetical, is I would take away powers from Buenos Aires and return them to the regions, and
mm,
create a constitutional framework that restores power to the regions, while making sure that the federal government cannot take those powers away again, and that the regions don't screw with each other. I would
yeah,
reintroduce regionalization, more or less.
that would be really interesting. They also have a lot of untapped potential in terms of agriculture, which is something that I wasn't super aware about.
Well, not
La
just
Pampa,
agriculture, not just
yeah, yeah, yeah.
agriculture. Have you seen how well educated young Argentinians are? It's
Oh
one of the
yeah, they are.
best
They.
and highest educated countries in the world. There's
Oh
so
yeah,
much potential there. It's so sad how much of it is wasted. Uh,
yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of red tape to the creation of businesses as well. But importantly, Peronism has had a very complicated legacy there. It's a very complicated legacy. And I don't think the country has fully uh, just kind of
Faced it.
come to terms with everything it did, I guess. You know, the thing with Peronism is that it started out as like an FDR style kind of New Deal arrangement, and it worked for Argentina very well at the beginning. But then when Perón came about in his second term, he became a lot more conservative and a lot more similar to other Latin American dictators of that time. So Peronism is at this weird stage where it basically means anything, where you can be like a left-wing Peronist that's like more similar to Peron on his first term, or a right-wing Peronist, which is like more similar to Peron in his second term. And in either case, there are like deep statist kind of uh, entrenched complications in how uh, those, you know, that ideology approaches government. And it's very unique. I think it's really difficult to discuss Peron for anyone who doesn't know the Argentinian context at the time. But this is kind of like Ataturk in a way, in that you have a person that has this tremendous shadow over how the institutions of a country work. And you know, I think for Argentina to move forward, it needs to reevaluate how it
Are you sure it's a
relates to.
shadow? It's a sure. Are you sure? Because like in Europe
Mm.
concerning Spain, we have this thing that you know about probably, the ghost of
Yeah,
Franco,
so Franco, yeah.
and it's actually more of a negative thing than a positive thing. And I would see the legacies of
Uh-huh.
Peronism as a negative thing, as a ghost of Peron.
I would too. I would too,
Mm.
because uh, this is a problem we had with AMLO in Mexico, right? I think AMLO's presidency has been very good, but I think the best thing he can do for Mexico right now is go away, because he's been kind of like the face of the left for over 30 years at this point, right? And leftist thought was so captured in his figure that, you know,
Oh, that reminds me of
there was
something.
there was very little room for innovation. And the thing with Peron is that people still think in terms of Peron. So that's like. Probably something that they should move forward of.
I'm wait, let me look him up. So this is I'm gonna kind of spoil this right away. Um
Hmm.
Man, this is so sad. So I've
Hmm.
been researching a lot of Hungarian politics recently because I am thinking about and making a very long video, kind of like the realism one, about how Hungarian democracy died. And God damn it, there's so many people who yeah, found him. Oh my God. Okay. There's so many people who've asked me over the time, why is there no effective Hungarian left wing anymore? Right?
Hmm.
And so there is a guy in Hungarian politics called, how do you pronounce this? Ferenc Gyurcsány. Ferenc Gyurcsány. Ferenc Gyurcsány was Prime Minister of Hungary from 2004 to 2009. He's a socialist. He was of the Hungarian Socialist Party, right?
Hmm.
And the government he led was horrendously corrupt. Dishing up bribes, regional favors, etc., right? And there's an
Hmm.
infamous incident that happened. I'm going to link you this because you might be interested in this, called the Özöd speech. And this was like, I think, a few years before the next elections were supposed to happen. There was a
Hmm.
meeting among the top party leaders where they discussed what they should do for the remaining years that they had in government and to prepare for the elections. And Gyurcsány literally sort of talked about, because the speech was secretly recorded, and in the recording you can hear him talking about how many bribes they took, the enormous extent of the corruption, that they were aware of the corruption going on. And they talked about it. Said, yeah, we made a lot of money. We made a lot of money doing this. It helped us a lot. Yeah. But, we should turn it down a little for the elections. Which is outrageous, right? It's outrageous. And
Yeah.
it caused an enormous outburst of protests in 2006. And
Hmm.
riding those protests is what eventually got Orban elected, right? And
Yeah.
the incredible thing is, Gyurcsány refused to step down. He refused to resign after that secret recording was revealed to the public and caused the protests. He refused to go. And when people ask, why is there no Hungarian left? Okay, the Hungarian left in that election in 2010 collapsed because of Gyurcsány and
Hmm.
his secret speech that was revealed. But the most
Yeah.
mind-blowing fact, the most incredible thing is, and you might not believe this, Ferenc Gyurcsány is still the fucking leader of the Hungarian socialists. He refused to go.
Oh,
He refused to go after that
that is so
recording.
disappointing. Yeah.
Yeah, he's still
Because
there.
no, that is so disappointing because I think that would have been kind of like the perfect opportunity to create a party that was not tied to like a post-Soviet legacy even. Because in Germany, for example, you look at Die Linke and you do see that there's like a bunch of former Stasi there. There's people who, were part of like the East German government and had connections into uh, the democratic Germany. But the problem of those people is that they have this way of holding onto
Yeah.
parties and
And he
projecting
formed,
their
like,
intentions. Yeah.
it gets so much worse with him because when he got
Uh-huh.
more unpopular, more unpopular, and more unpopular, and then at one point he just made another party and split the democratic left of Hungary in two, just out of sort of a personal egotistical stupidity. And he is still around. He's still around, holding like 1 or 2 seats for some useless left-wing party in the Hungarian parliament. He's still on the campaign posters. Like every election that Viktor Orban has run since 2010, they always plaster his face on all the campaign posters and use the secretly recorded speech because this imbecile refuses to go. He refuses to leave.
Oh, that is so sad.
It
Okay.
is.
Yeah, no.
I mean, it's not the main it's not the main reason why Orban is in power, but it's one of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
reasons. And is that kind of like the Almo thing that you mentioned? Someone who probably not as extreme, but is it something like that he
Uh,
refuses to go?
yeah. I think something similar happened in Turkey, for example. You know, in Turkey, you had this guy that was like the permanent rival of Erdogan, right? He just came back every election. He lost all the
Really?
time. But yeah, but he just was insistent on staying on, right? I will say that in my experience, leftist parties, regardless of how big or how small they are, have a lot of people in the leaderships that tend to be very personalistic, right? They're very driven like by their personal reputations and personal aims. But I think that might be a fact of like every party. I've just never been a militant in a party that wasn't like at least social democratic.
It is
Um,
very important to change
mhm.
leadership in any political
Yes,
party on a regular
yes.
basis. I do actually believe that that is like it doesn't matter if you have a system where like all party members vote, or where the
Mhm,
district bosses of party vote, etc. It is important to change leadership.
mhm.
It is
Yeah,
so
that's
important.
that's that's what I'm glad. Yeah, that's something that I really appreciate. Tamlo is going to do. He's going to retire from politics.
Yeah.
Like, he has like this. It's a funny thing, I guess. He has a ranch in southern Mexico called La Chingada, uh,
Legend.
which basic La Chingada, yeah, which basically means the fucked one. And yeah, and when he retires, he basically says that pues cuando me vaya me voy a la chingada, which means that I am going to fuck off. You know, like the moment I leave, I am not going to be in the public eye anymore, right? And I appreciate that because he is
Oh,
choosing to let go, and he's letting the movement mature, which for a long time he didn't. But when it was important, which is like when his presidency ended, I think he's choosing to do that, and that's very important.
ah. You could sing like when I was introduced to Ferenc Gujani, when I looked into like the
Uh-huh.
Hungarian story, the Hungarian who introduced me to him, is a left leaning Hungarian, and I said like, oh yeah,
Mm.
the problem is that the Hungarian left has the Gujani STD that just refuses to go away, and what you're saying about Alma, that is actually what most Hungarians are probably dreaming of, and the most absurd and obscene thing, like
Mm.
everything about Ferenc Gujani is just he plagiarized his diploma. He was insanely corrupt. He negotiated, by the way, the gas deals with Russia, not Orban. He
Mm.
negotiated the gas deals with Russia and got a lot of money out of that. And now he just
Mm.
refuses to go. He just refuses to leave, and is by that he's just holding down the Hungarian left. It's
Yeah.
crazy that in Hungary, the main opposite, like you have one of the most right wing governments in Europe, because the Dutch government is actually now more right wing than that of Orban. But you have this really right wing government, and you expect there to be a left wing opposition, but there is no effective left wing opposition. The largest opposition to Orban is another conservative party, a liberal conservative party that is fed up with the
Uh,
right wing course, because Ferenc Gyani has just ruined the Hungarian left. They're
yeah.
refusing to
The
leave. Yeah.
Union for Hungary, United for Hungary, something like that.
Yeah,
Not
something
super.
like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's very disappointing. But yeah, I think that's something you need to have. You made a great video about this, which I don't know why you took down, but the idea of like entering politics with the mindset of public service, that is something that I think people overall should have and should do. You know, you're not here for you, you're here for a project. And the
Yeah.
moment that you can't help the project anymore, it's time to either leave or participate in some other way.
Well,
And
it's not
yeah.
just about that. It's also about basic decency in this case. This
Yeah,
guy
yeah.
was caught in one of the worst corruption scandals in the history of the Hungarian Republic. He should have left. But
Yeah, he
no.
should.
He should have left. People don't remember, like the 2006 Hungarian riots are famous because they were so big, like hundreds of thousands of Hungarians protested the government, which is not surprising. I mean, literally a secret recording of the prime minister bragging about how many bribes he had taken. It's crazy. No wonder people rioted. And the reason that riot is famous is because one of the Hungarians broke into the tank from the World War II memorial and managed to get it going and drove the tank through a police barricade. but yeah, no, he should have left. He should have gone. He shouldn't have just resigned as prime minister, which he didn't do, which is the insane thing. The fact that he ran again. Is like, you should have left. Go into the private sector. Go sell Russian gas.
Yeah. get a deal with those guys.
Yeah, it's just we got very detoured on this one.
Yeah. I think I have to say that, you know, something I'm looking forward to, supposing that Russia is defeated, is that a lot of these parties, a lot of these personalities that are propped up by, like, you know, Russian money essentially, are going to disappear. And I'm really excited for what European democracy will look like in a future where, you know, Russia is not like giving money to
I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure about that.
Really?
There's evidently new sources of money. There's a really interesting investigation being done by British journalists who believe that a lot of, in particular, the Brexit right wing in Britain is actually financed by the Heritage Foundation in the United States.
Oh, so it's the Americans now.
Yeah, as Russian money is retreating, we're seeing right wing Heritage Foundation money swamp into the European right now. And possibly even Saudi money. Like, there's a vacuum for money, and what happened in the vacuum is that all these right-wing people, they realize, I don't have money. I need to go to someone else to beg.
Yeah. This is one of the reasons why I'm really concerned about transatlanticism. You know, we should probably save this for another one, but I do see the US as this, like, democracy in decline. I would never say it was a country that was particularly democratic, but it's going through a stage that I don't know if we want to be invested
in. We'll see. If Trump gets reelected, I am on board with the idea that this is a democracy on decline.
He's very likely to get reelected.
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. I'm waiting to see.
Yeah, I think that polling overall has, like, Biden approval at 40% and Trump approval at 41%. Typically, that wouldn't be concerning if for the fact that a Democratic president in the, you know, a Democrat in the US needs the popular vote to win. And right now, it's kind of an open question if Biden can get that. I hope he does. But, you know, he's playing with fire. He's been playing with fire for a bit.
I should tell, as we end this, to my audience, I've been sitting on a finished video for a week now that I can't publish it because the sponsor is not getting back to me. I've been I made the sponsorship, I made everything ready, and I'm just waiting for them to come and be like, yeah, I have to do that, by the way. I can't just, when you get a sponsor, you have to write a script, edit it all together for them, present it to them, and if they don't approve of it, they say, no, do something else. And, well, not in the German accent, but yeah, I have to wait for that. Unfortunately, I have to wait. Have you noticed that my German accent is coming back? Because I'm spending more and more time speaking German with people and speaking with German people. And my German accent, I need to spend more time speaking with English people so I don't get the German accent creeping back into me.
Yeah, we used to have a lot of English friends. I wonder what happened.
No, it's more that I moved to Vienna and that I hang out with a lot of people. And it's weird because even though this is a German-speaking country, I speak English with a lot of the people I know here. And because they speak English in this accent, I sort of started picking up the accent more and more. I need to be on guard.
I see.
I need to be
Yeah,
careful.
yeah. Yeah,
Okay then.
go to the local cheapie, I guess.
Well, let's say our goodbyes and end this.
Okay.
See you
Goodbye,
all the next
everyone.
time.
Hope you
See you the next
enjoyed.
time.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
See you next time. Bye bye.